The next speech would be by Sato Maki, and from Jonathan McKinney is about habit and the logic of Basho.
So today we're going to talk about habit and the logic of Basho. Do you just click on the next slide? Kubo? Thank you. So Jonathan and I have been working on the habit, the problem of habit for this past few years. And we have been working on the logic of Basho, and from our understanding, the logic of Basho is non-dualism. And of course, it's the philosophy of place, but it is intersubjective and interrelational. So it says that habits and our project. So we are considering of which aspects of Basho can help us talk about habits. And so Jonathan is basically working on cognitive science, and I am working from the perspective of Japanese philosophy. I'm also working on Mahayana Buddhism as Robotic has been talking about as well. So I think I'll just hand over to Jonathan, for the next slide, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, just to motivate our project habits are really important for cognitive science, and especially embodied cognitive science, because they help explain how it is that we relate to our world and relate to other organisms, and also how it is that we become who we are. So develop the skills and techniques that we develop over time. And also we wanted to point out the sort of importance of habits in the current world we live in, where we're being socially isolated. And I think there are some misconceptions about habits that engaging with Nishida in particular can help us shed light on. And there are three that we're kind of laying out. We'll sketch them briefly and engage with Nishida's philosophy of habit. First of all, the misconceptions about habit is they're typically taken to be internal or intrinsic to one person. But we actually think there's evidence to suggest that habits are social. Habits are affective, or some things that we care about or involve our values, and habits are distributed. So we think that habits are social because individuals can share them, that it includes between humans, but also between humans and non-humans, and also between humans and the world, which is the sort of bold move that sort of breaks the norms of what we're talking about. We develop habits together, and communities can have habits. Maki will talk a little bit about how habits relate to our values, specifically how it is that habits can reflect things that are meaningful to us, as well as we'll talk a little bit about how repetitive re-engagement with activity is sort of describes something that we value. Also, the sort of takeaway where you can bring in Basho most significantly is talking about how habits can be distributed or might be on the side of the world, which involves a little bit of unpacking. So first, talk with our wonderful robot picture here. Talk a little bit about William James and how he talks about habit. And there are two key features for habit in William James. And it's important because habits are a foundational feature of our mental lives for William James, who is, of course, influences Nishida. On his chapter on habit, William James describes habit as living organisms from the outward perspective are simply bundles of habits. So this is a way of describing how it is that organisms can become an individual or persist over time in a world of constant change. But he says something also that's very peculiar that shows up in Nishida's philosophy. And that is that habit, when you try and define what a habit is, according to William James, one is led to the fundamental properties of matter, or the laws of nature, which are nothing but the immutable habits. In other words, you can find stability not just in organisms and the sort of routines that they're on, but you can also find stability in the world itself, in particular, the laws of our world. And this is really, really important, especially because if you look at contemporary psychology that follows James, and even cognitive science in the recent years, habits are still taken to be intrinsic to the individual, something that might even be mental. Obviously, you can develop habits and people have them, but you wouldn't necessarily look to the world to find them. So yeah, this is important. And I want to put a note on the three sort of elements we're going to focus on. One, where do you get these habits from? We want to talk about how it is that you could get the habits from the world through this engagement with the world, the direct engagement with the world. But we can also get habits from other people. And then, like I said, other agents like animals or chairs, for example. We'll talk a little bit about that, I guess. And then I wanted to point out that this is often ignored key feature of ecological psychology or embodied cognitive science, which has the sort of theory of affordances, which are defined as stable law-like opportunities in the world, or laws of nature in this sort of habit sense. And how is it that you develop habits, according to James, is through practice. It'll come up again. So Nishida writes specifically about habit as well, although he's not this isn't defining for his philosophy. It is something that he uses to explore some of his ideas further. So he developed his notion of habit and action intuition in his later work. He argued that habit is not merely a conditional response, but it's also a capability, an ability, and is strengthened through repetitive practice. And this is important because it involves the sort of structure, the temporality or the ever-changing aspects of our experience, but also the spatiality, which might be the structural reliability, the stability of our experience. Subsequently, Nishida claims that we shape and are shaped by reality through a process of double negation. This is something that comes up a lot in Nishida's philosophy early and throughout his whole career. But this is important that we think, because it specifically references how it is he talks about how it is we acquire habits. And that is that in order to fully engage with reality, in other words, to obtain the stability of basically achieve a unity with the environment or others, and sort of can learn from them their habits. We have to negate our own subjective perspective. We get out of our own way. And only in doing that can we see the world as it is or engage with the world as it is in order to directly contact that stability. So stability is something that is distributed around your world, not just inside your body. And you can acquire those habits through repetitive practice of self-negation. Okay. And this relates directly to the notion of action intuition or koiteki tokan. I think we're all pretty familiar with koiteki tokan, but it's this notion of non-dualism at the individual level that takes input like data input like the intuition dimension and the performative dimension or the performative aspect, your action, and fuses them together as inseparable. So Kasulis presents this in the most beautiful way with an example of how two gears interact with each other. When two gears are interlocking and they're moving, their cogs are touching, one could say one is causing the other to move. You could also say that the other one is causing the first one to move. But when Kasulis asks, okay, which one is it? The answer ends up being obviously both. This is in fact like the intuition's receiving information, and the acting, performing on the world are the same moment of engagement. Nishida brings this in when talking about habits. He says we form habits through a process of self-negation, such that we shift our focus away from our bodily sensations and our thoughts to engage with reality itself. And as embodied beings, repetition of an act de-emphasizes our sensations and intuitions and strengthens our urge and ability to perform the act. We make direct contact with this stability of the world and can develop, if we repeatedly practice it, we can develop a habit for ourselves. So we want to talk a little bit about how it is that this could be social, because this conference very importantly spreads out what the sort of themes that we're talking about to be social, but also world involving. And I just wanted to briefly reference Yoko Arisaka's work, a really influential work that impacted my own research. And that is just talking about sort of like dialectical relationship we have with others. And that's not just other humans, but also animals and the world itself. And we relate to the world through this process of double negation, where we can achieve our individuality through like negating others, but also negate ourselves to engage directly with others. And I'll pass it off to Maki to talk about.
Yes, so it's my turn now. So I'm going to talk about the affective dimension of experience. So the starting point for this was that what basically starts from where we are situated right now. So basically we're thrown into or forced to adapt with the COVID-19 situation. And so I was wondering, is this like a new creation of new habit? They say new normal, but I was thinking, is this like a new habit? So we are experiencing social isolation, like contacting people through Zoom and online. But I was wondering if habits like this changes in our the changes in our daily life affects our habits in various aspects, not only through our daily life, but also maybe it has a way of it has an effect to habitual way of thinking as well. So I was wondering, this habitual lifestyle change might have like interconnectivity with the habitual way of thinking. So I'm going to skip this the use of language part, but so I was thinking that mutually affection between habitual lifestyle and habitual way of thinking is also very important in the way of thinking from the logic of Basho. So could you, thanks. So Nishida talks on decision making. This is all from Basho. So for Nishida, perception is interrelationality between object and its contents, like meaning and its action, that constantly changes in accordance with the flow of time. So basically, he argues that that object, content, or meaning and action are interrelational, intertwined, therefore cannot be argued separately. They're intrinsically interrelational. That really means a lot to the COVID-19 situation that have affected the lifestyle as well. So Basho is a transcendental field of consciousness where the conflict between the subject-object is internalized, where the ever-changing work of consciousness is being reflected. So, and he also goes on that field of consciousness consists of sensation that includes meaning. This, from my perspective, it means that without the sensation, it cannot create meaning. So it means that we have to have like a bodily sensation, not that the thing is working on shallowly from the mind, but also we have to have the bodily contact to change or to change our habits or mind, or to go through the okay, it's to changing the lifestyle as well. So experiences, according to Nishida, experiences are therefore embedded logic rather than super-transcendental logic. And he goes on to recognize, perceive is to have experiences, building oneself within oneself. And real experience, real experience can only be experienced in the field of absolute nothing, where everything is freed from knowledge, senses to know. Can you go to the next slide, Kupo? Thanks. We're doing collaborative work here, sorry. Decision-making judgment is, Nishida says that decision-making judgment is a process of particularization of oneself from the general. And he also goes on that consciousness is nothingness, but is something that envelopes the being. So in the end, he concludes that decision-making judgment and the force of will is the two sides of the same action. So as I have started, my starting point was, how to think about the COVID-19 situation where we are thrown into. That's whether the habitual lifestyle change is affecting the habitual way of thinking. So he says that Nishida says that decision-making at the interrelationship of the will, as the interrelationship of the will. Sorry, my mask is not really being kind to me, that it just sticks onto my rib. I'll keep on going. A particular decision-making is inclusive of the place where general decision-making is taking place. And from the perspective of the chain reactions and decision-making, we already are seeing the shift from the field of decision-making to the field of force of will. The force of will enables our ability to make decisions. So habitual lifestyle, according to Nishida's, Basho's logic, I think that we can say that habitual lifestyle shapes our habitual way of thinking as well. So could you go, I'm going to give you an example in the case of laughter and humor. So, even though I started from this COVID-19 situation, how to think about the habitual way of change in lifestyle is affecting the habitual way of thinking, I thought that it's too sad to keep on thinking about these, depressing COVID-19 situations. So I just thought that a case of laughter or humor might be interesting, as Hans-Peter Ydurbach Sensei showed us the Snoopy thing. Anyway, habitual way of thinking perception in accordance with shared bodily experience is the thing that we have drawn out from our previous researchers. And habit is correlational outcome of body-mind interaction, yet is a negation of conscious, that is me, conscious of myself. It's interesting to note that AI cannot really understand funniness or humor and sarcasm. Maybe this is because of the limitation of the language understandings. But the problem that now I'm shifting into is how can we explain the shared laughter? Is there a universal intercultural laughter or shared values in Grokul, in sense grow? Yes? Oh, okay. Sorry. Because of this, I cannot really see my PowerPoint. So, shared value in a Grokul community, or is there a need of creation of space for laughter, or is there an ability to enjoy the funniness? So, I'm just going to let you see a little video. Can you see it? So this is basically a robot, and the character on the left-hand side is one from Doraemon. He always is like bullying Nobita-kun, but they're all sleeping on the banana skin, and we thought that we were supposed to have you all laugh. By the way, that you guys look so serious at this. So it's like, wow. Okay, so there's no place for laughness or funniness here anyway. But if Kupo, we failed. So is there anything that you want to add to this? They never made. We couldn't make them laugh. Is there?
Yeah, absolutely. This is important because we were talking a little bit about sort of AI research and how it is that AI is struggling with developing language or understanding complex concepts like humor. And it's because they are fundamentally disconnected from others, like of the social world. There's no opening act that an AI can get, juiced up for. And then AI also don't have access to the world like we do. So this is sort of a fundamental point, like AI as a test case for what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I also wanted to include that because we have been working on an activism, and we thought that, we need to have this bodily experience to share the laughter. It's not like that in a contextual language base that we can share the laughter, but with your bodily experience with the banana skin, that you actually have this, experience through your body sentiments, not only through your will, that this actually happens. The experiences that you have from your past also affects you in this kind of laughter. So, should we go to the next slide then?
Yes. I can talk a little bit about, just briefly, because I know we've got very little time left, that the final sort of takeaway is that we want to discuss just briefly the sort of imply. So go ahead. Just imply that habits shape and are shaped by our world, and I think there's some evidence to support this. So importantly, when we walk, we literally create paths in the ground that other people can follow. So that has moral implications. So we might care about, beautiful landmarks or temples, but every time we visit them, we can cause harm to them by, destroying environments or making new paths into nature and causing harm. So these, like, our habits are represented in our world. Importantly, the environment also impacts our habits. So the roads in front of us and the well-structured environment around us sort of gives us a place to be, and we cohabitate with others. So we can learn from animals and also impart wisdom for them, but develop relationships. So this is especially important in times of social isolation. So I encourage you all to spend time, with your animals or other people to try and cultivate those spaces so that you don't lose contact with the sources of where your habits came from, or the kinds of ways of being that you developed over your lifetime. So this is just a brief summary. I think we've already pretty much covered it. So
yes,
it just helps us address.
We are getting out of time.
Of course. So the takeaway: habits are not in your head, but they're close to your heart, shared with others, and a part of your world. So please take care of your heart, mind, seek out supportive friends, and cultivate positive spaces.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got a question from Professor Riederbach. Thank you very much for the question. So we got them, could you explain whether on your view there is a distinction of human and animal life or human intelligence and AI, added by Professor Kopf? Well, maybe I could show my pretty face a little bit more. ちょっと待ってくださいね。So I don't really see there's a distinction between human and animal life. I've been leading Dogen for this past few years with Professor Sueki Fumihiko. And based on Dogen's understanding, I think he doesn't really differentiate human and animal. And of course, if you read further on the Zen, Rinzai Zen, I think Obakuryo also talks that there's no difference even between gareki shoheki, which is like, the stones and pebbles, and so I think if we follow the argument made in Zen Buddhism and from Dogen's Soto Zen, I guess it's very difficult to, claim that there's a distinction between human and animal life. So I'm completely in with you, Professor Liebertebach. You look stunned. Yes, and so the human intelligence and AI. So the thing is that I have actually wrote a paper on the difference between human intelligence, animal, and the difference between human intelligence, AI, and human. The thing is that for the artificial intelligence right now, they don't really have the bodily senses. And the thing is that, as we have argued, as Jonathan and I have been arguing, we need an inactive bodily experiences to really incorporate with the environment, right? So I think that there's a huge difference if AI is to be remained just in the computer system, that they have to have its own bodily sensory system input. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for us to, say that or claim that human intelligence and AI could be the same. Do we have time? And I can just ask it out over. Oh, Kyle! Well, we have to finish, Kyle. It's just so sad. How are you, Kyle? Hope that you're okay. We miss you here. We miss you here. Yes, we will use chat. Sorry, we have to finish the session.
Sorry again.
Sorry.
No problem.
So, sorry again. Obviously, the technical situation needs some time. Thank you all. Thank you to the presentators, and we can go to the next panel. Thank you all.